Commander Jake Phillips looked at his small fleet of 6 destroyers and wondered if he was leading his crews to their deaths. His ships were moving through space near Neptune, where long-range sensors had detected the first Zephyrian scout vessels. The enemy ships were still days away from the main human fleet, but someone had to make first contact. Someone had to send a message that Earth would not surrender without a fight. The bridge of his destroyer was cramped and filled with the sound of computers working and crew members talking quietly. Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez sat at the weapons, station checking and rechecking their missiles and energy cannons. Everyone knew their weapons were weak compared to what the Zephyrians possessed, but they were all humanity had. Contact on sensors called out the navigation officer. On the main screen, a shape appeared that made everyone on the bridge stop talking. The Zephyrian scout ship was massive and sleek, like a deadly knife cutting through space. It was 10 times larger than Phillips's destroyer and seemed to glow with its own inner light. Phillips opened a communication channel to all his ships. "This is it, everyone. Remember what we are fighting for. Remember who we are protecting. Stay close and follow my lead." His 6 destroyers moved into attack formation even though they knew it was hopeless. The alien ship detected them immediately, and a voice filled the bridge speaking perfect English. The voice was cold and mechanical, like a computer trying to sound human. "Human vessels, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Admiral Vera Logan was watching the encounter from her command ship, still days away from the main battle. This was always her favorite part of conquering a new species. The moment when they realized how hopeless their situation was and gave up their foolish dreams of freedom. She expected these humans to surrender just like all the others. Phillips took a deep breath and activated his transmitter. His words were broadcast not just to the alien ship but to every human vessel in the solar system and to Earth itself. "This is Commander Jake Phillips of the United Earth Navy. You are not welcome in our system. Leave now, or we will remove you." The silence that followed lasted for several seconds. On board the Zephyrian command ship, Admiral Logan stared at her communication screen in disbelief. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to their surrender demand with a threat. She was more curious than angry. The Zephyrian scout ship responded quickly and without mercy. Beams of pure energy lanced out from its weapon ports and struck 3 of Phillips's destroyers. The human ships exploded instantly in brilliant flashes of light and fire. Half of Phillips's force was gone in the first seconds of combat. "Return fire," Phillips shouted, even though he knew it was useless. His remaining ships launched their missiles and fired their energy cannons at the alien vessel. The weapons struck the Zephyrian shields and disappeared like raindrops hitting a mountain. The alien ship was undamaged. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked at his commander with determination in his eyes. "Sir, request permission to ram the enemy vessel." Phillips wanted to say no. He wanted to order a retreat so at least some of his people could survive to fight another day. But he knew this moment was being watched by every human in the solar system. What happened here would determine whether humanity fought or surrendered. "Permission granted," Phillips said quietly. Rodriguez smiled and programmed his ship's navigation computer for a collision course. The destroyer accelerated toward the alien ship at maximum speed, while the other 2 remaining vessels provided covering fire. The Zephyrians were caught completely off guard. No species had ever attempted a ramming attack against them. Their ships were designed to fight enemies who used tactics and strategy, not enemies who were willing to die to inflict damage. Rodriguez's destroyer slammed into the rear section of the alien ship just as its nuclear warheads detonated. The explosion was visible from Earth even without telescopes. The Zephyrian scout ship lost power and began drifting helplessly through space. Its shields were down and its weapons were offline. For the first time in their military history, the Zephyrians had taken casualties in an opening battle. Phillips and his 2 remaining ships continued their attack on the crippled alien vessel. Their weapons finally began to penetrate the hull and cause real damage. Within minutes, the proud Zephyrian scout ship was a burning wreck floating dead in space. Admiral Logan watched the destruction of her scout ship with fascination rather than anger. These humans had just accomplished something impossible. They had destroyed a Zephyrian vessel using primitive weapons and outdated tactics. She began to think that this conquest might be more interesting than she had expected. On Earth, the news of the first battle spread quickly through every communication network. People gathered around television screens and computer displays to watch the recordings of the fight. They saw their ships destroyed by alien weapons. They saw brave men and women die in explosions of fire and metal, but they also saw something else. They saw that the aliens could be hurt. General Peter Walsh was coordinating ground defenses from a command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. When he heard about Phillips's victory, he immediately contacted every military base on the planet. "You have all seen what our people can do in space," he told them. "If these aliens want our world, they will have to take it from us one city at a time." Captain Nina Foster was organizing civilian resistance networks in the ruins of old military bunkers. She had been planning for this day since the first warnings about the Zephyrian fleet arrived. Every major city now had hidden weapons caches and communication equipment. If the aliens landed on Earth, they would find that every human was a potential soldier. The main Zephyrian fleet continued its approach toward Earth, but Admiral Logan was now paying much more attention to intelligence, reports about human capabilities. These creatures were clearly different from other species the Zephyrians had conquered. They seemed to become more dangerous when faced with impossible odds rather than less dangerous. Phillips returned to the main human fleet with his 2 surviving ships and was immediately promoted to captain for his actions. More importantly, his victory had given the human fleet something they desperately needed: hope. Every ship captain now knew that Zephyrian vessels could be destroyed if humans were willing to pay the price. Admiral Morrison called another meeting of her senior officers to plan their next move. The enemy main fleet would arrive at Earth in less than 2 weeks. Human intelligence estimated they would face more than 9,000 capital ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in the human fleet. "We cannot win a direct battle," Morrison told her officers. "But we don't need to win. We just need to make them pay such a high price that they decide Earth is not worth the cost. We need to show them that humans will never stop fighting no matter how hopeless the situation becomes." Dr. Amy Chen had been studying the wreckage of the destroyed Zephyrian scout ship. Her teams had recovered pieces of alien technology and were trying to understand how it worked. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The aliens were using technology that was thousands of years old. They had not improved their weapons or defenses for centuries because they had never needed to. "They are overconfident," Amy reported to the military leadership. "Their ships are powerful, but they are designed to fight enemies who surrender quickly. They are not prepared for a prolonged battle against an enemy who refuses to give up." President Carter addressed the people of Earth one final time before the main battle began. Her words were broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system and recorded for future generations. "My fellow humans, we face the greatest threat in our history. An enemy comes to our world who has conquered every other species they have encountered. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. They expect us to abandon everything that makes us human." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "They are about to learn that they have made a terrible mistake. We are humanity. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that lasted generations. We have conquered this planet not through superior strength but through superior determination. Now we will show the galaxy what that determination can accomplish." The main Zephyrian fleet entered the outer edge of the solar system 3 days ahead of schedule. Their massive ships blotted out entire sections of stars as they moved toward Earth. Admiral Logan stood on her command deck and looked at the small blue planet that was her next conquest. She wondered if these strange humans would provide her with the same entertainment that Commander Phillips had given her near Neptune. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars through the main window. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of engines and the beeping of computers. She had been in space for 20 years but had never seen anything like what appeared on her screens today. Her hands shook as she read the report again and again. Captain Ryan Blake walked up to her with a data pad in his hand. His face was pale, and his voice was low when he spoke. The numbers he showed her made no sense at first. 10,000 ships were moving toward Earth from the edge of space. Each ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. The smallest enemy vessel was the size of a human city. "Are you sure about these readings?" Kate asked Ryan. She hoped the sensors were broken or that someone had made a mistake. Ryan nodded his head slowly and pointed at the screen. The computer had checked the numbers 5 times. There was no mistake. The Zephyrian Armada was coming to Earth. Kate had heard stories about the Zephyrians since she was a child. They were the monsters that parents used to scare children into behaving. The Zephyrians had conquered every planet they visited for 300 years. No one had ever stopped them. No one had even slowed them down. When they arrived at a world, the people there had 2 choices. They could surrender and become slaves, or they could die. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, but Kate could see the fear in their eyes. Lieutenant Sarah Woods was trying to calculate how long it would take the enemy fleet to reach Earth. Her computer kept giving her the same answer. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, the most powerful force in the galaxy would arrive at humanity's homeworld. Kate pressed a button on her chair and spoke into her microphone. Her voice went to every ship in the human fleet and to Earth itself. "This is Admiral Morrison. We have detected a large enemy force approaching our system. All ships are to return to Earth immediately. This is not a drill." "On Earth, President." Lisa Carter was sitting in her office when the message arrived. She had been reading reports about trade agreements and colony funding. Now she was reading about the end of human civilization. She called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Within an hour, every leader on the planet was sitting around a large table in the Capitol building. Defense Minister Carl Stevens spread out star charts on the table and showed everyone where the enemy fleet was located. The Zephyrian ships were still far away, but they were moving fast. At their current speed, they would reach the outer planets in 2 weeks and Earth in 3 weeks. "What do we know about their capabilities?" President Carter asked. Dr. Amy Chen stood up from her seat and activated a holographic display. She had spent her entire career studying alien species and their technologies. What she showed the council made everyone in the room feel sick. Each Zephyrian ship has shields that can stop the blast from an exploding star, Amy explained. Their weapons can crack a planet in half. They have been using the same technology for thousands of years because no one has ever forced them to improve it. They don't need to improve it. Carl Stevens asked the question that everyone was thinking. "How many ships do we have?" The answer came from Admiral Morrison, who had joined the meeting by video link from her ship. "We have 850 combat vessels. Most of them are small destroyers and frigates. We have 12 battleships and 1 dreadnought." The room was quiet for a long time. President Carter looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leaders. Some of them looked angry. Some looked scared. Most looked defeated before the battle had even started. She stood up and walked to the window that showed the city below. People were going about their normal lives. They had no idea that death was coming for them from the stars. "We could try to negotiate," suggested the Minister of Foreign Affairs. "Maybe they would accept our surrender and let some of us live." President Carter turned around and looked at him with fire in her eyes. "We are not surrendering," she said in a voice that filled the room. "We are human beings. We have fought for our freedom for thousands of years on this planet. We will not stop fighting now just because the enemy comes from space instead of across an ocean." Carl Stevens started making plans immediately. All non-military personnel would be evacuated from the outer colonies. Every warship in human space would be recalled to defend Earth. The orbital defense platforms would be armed with every weapon humanity possessed. If the Zephyrians wanted Earth, they would have to take it by force. Dr. Amy Chen returned to her laboratory to study every piece of information humans had about the Zephyrians. Most of it came from the ruins of worlds they had conquered. She spent days and nights reading reports and watching old video messages. Slowly, she began to understand something important about the enemy. The Zephyrians had never fought a real war. Every species they encountered surrendered after seeing their fleet. They had become lazy and overconfident. They expected their enemies to give up without a fight. This might be the only advantage humanity had. Back on the Defiance, Admiral Morrison gathered her senior officers for a meeting. The ship's conference room was small and crowded, but every captain in the fleet was there either in person or by video link. She looked at each face and saw the same mix of fear and determination that she felt in her own heart. "They outnumber us 12-1, she told them. "Their ships are bigger and stronger than ours. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours. By every measure of military science, we should surrender now and save lives." She paused and looked out the window at the stars. "But we are not going to surrender. We are going to fight them, with everything we have." Captain Ryan Blake asked what everyone was thinking. "What chance do we have of winning?" Morrison smiled for the first time in days. It was not a happy smile, but it was real. "None," she said. "We have no chance of winning a conventional battle. So we are not going to fight a conventional battle. We are going to show these aliens what happens when they threaten the home of humanity." The meeting ended and the officers returned to their ships. Across human space, every warship was turning toward Earth. Families said goodbye to their loved ones who served in the military. Children were evacuated to shelters deep underground. Workers loaded ammunition onto ships and checked weapon systems. In the darkness between the stars, the Zephyrian Armada continued its approach toward Earth. Admiral Vera Logan stood on the command deck of her flagship and looked at the small, yellow star that was humanity's sun. She had conquered 47 worlds in her career. This would be number 48. She expected it to be as easy as all the others. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space above Earth like a dark cloud that blocked out the stars. Admiral Logan looked down at the blue and green planet below and saw something that troubled her deeply. The humans had not surrendered despite losing most of their fleet. Instead, they were preparing to fight even harder. President Carter stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Council as alien ships filled the sky above every major city. The offer from Admiral Logan had arrived an hour ago, transmitted on all human communication frequencies. The terms were simple: immediate surrender in exchange for the survival of Earth's population under Zephyrian rule. "They are giving us one final chance to save our species," said the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His voice shook as he spoke, because everyone in the room could see the massive alien vessels through the windows. "We have fought bravely, but the battle is over. Perhaps it is time to think about the future of our children." Carter walked to the window and looked up at the enemy ships that filled the sky. Each one was large enough to hold a human city, and there were thousands of them. The logical choice was obvious. Surrender would save millions of lives. Resistance would only lead to the complete destruction of human civilization. "I will give Admiral Logan our answer," Carter said, as she activated the planetary communication system. Her words would be broadcast to every human settlement and to the Zephyrian fleet itself. She took a deep breath and spoke from her heart. "We are humanity. We bow to no one. We kneel to no master. You may destroy our cities, our ships, our bodies, but you will never break our spirit. We will fight you on the seas and oceans. We will fight you in the air. We will fight you on the beaches. We will fight you in the hills. We will never surrender." Admiral Logan listened to the human response from her command deck and felt something she had not experienced in centuries: respect for an enemy. These creatures were facing certain death, but they refused to abandon their principles. It was both admirable and completely insane. Major Tony Clark commanded the defense of Luna Base as the first Zephyrian landing craft approached the moon. The humans had spent months turning the lunar surface into a fortress, with weapons hidden in every crater, and supply tunnels connecting every installation. If the aliens wanted to establish a foothold in the Earth system, they would have to pay for every meter of ground. The Zephyrian assault troops were the best soldiers in the galaxy. They had conquered worlds defended by species far more advanced than humanity. The attack on Luna Base was supposed to be a simple operation to secure a staging area for the invasion of Earth itself. Instead, it became a nightmare of hidden weapons and desperate defenders. "Contact front," shouted Sergeant Kevin Ross as Zephyrian soldiers emerged from their landing craft. The aliens were tall and graceful with technology that made them nearly invulnerable to human weapons. but they had never fought an enemy that turned every rock and crater into a potential ambush point. The battle for Luna Base lasted 18 hours with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The Zephyrians had superior firepower and armor, but the humans knew every tunnel and hiding place on the moon's surface. Every time the aliens thought they had secured an area, human defenders would emerge from underground passages and attack their flanks. Captain Steve Parker stood on the bridge of humanity's last orbital defense station as Zephyrian warships closed in for the final assault. His crew had been firing continuously for 12 hours and their weapons were beginning to overheat. Enemy return fire had damaged most of their systems, but they kept fighting. "Sir, we are receiving a surrender demand from the enemy fleet," reported his communication officer. Parker looked around at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. These men and women had volunteered to die protecting their homeworld, and they would not waste that sacrifice. "Tell them we are too busy to talk right now," Parker replied as he targeted another enemy cruiser. His weapons struck the alien ship's shields and created a brief flash of light before being absorbed harmlessly. The enemy ship responded with a beam that cut through his station's hull like paper. The orbital defense station exploded in a ball of fire that was visible from Earth's surface. Captain Parker and his entire crew died at their posts, but their sacrifice bought precious minutes for the evacuation of civilian populations to underground shelters. Every second of delay they created meant more innocent lives saved. Dr. Helen Wade worked frantically in her laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains as the battle raged overhead. She had been studying captured Zephyrian technology for months, trying to find some weakness that humanity could exploit. Now, with invasion imminent, she had finally discovered something that might help. The Zephyrian fleet uses quantum communication networks to coordinate their operations, she explained to her research team. All their ships are connected through a single network that allows instant communication across vast distances. But if we could introduce a virus into that network, we might be able to disrupt their entire fleet. The idea was brilliant, but implementing it would require someone to physically deliver the virus to a Zephyrian command ship. It was a suicide mission that would almost certainly fail, but it was the only chance humanity had left. Dr. Wade began working on the virus while military planners tried to figure out how to deliver it. Colonel Jeff Barnes led the resistance in the ruins of New York City as Zephyrian ground forces landed in Central Park. The aliens had expected to find a terrified population begging for mercy. Instead, they found a city that had been turned into a fortress with every building prepared for urban warfare. The humans had learned from their victory at Luna Base that they could not match alien firepower, but they could make every street and every building cost the invaders dearly. Children as young as 12 carried messages between resistance cells, while elderly civilians sabotaged alien equipment whenever possible. "Remember what we are fighting for," Barnes told his soldiers as they prepared another ambush. "Every minute we delay them is another minute for our families to reach safety. Every alien soldier we stop is one less threat to our children. We may not win this war, but we can make sure the enemy remembers the price of trying to conquer Earth." Admiral Logan walked through the corridors of her flagship and tried to understand what was happening to her perfect conquest. She had invaded 47 worlds and everyone had surrendered within days of her arrival. Earth was different. The humans seemed to grow more determined as their situation became more hopeless. Her tactical officers reported that ground operations on every continent were behind schedule. Human resistance was far more effective than anyone had predicted. The aliens controlled the major cities, but they could not secure the countryside where human guerrilla fighters struck at supply lines and communication centers. "Admiral, we are receiving reports of successful human attacks on our supply convoys," reported her intelligence officer. "They are using improvised weapons and captured alien equipment to strike at our logistics network. Our ground forces are requesting additional reinforcements." Logan studied the tactical displays and realized that she was facing something unprecedented in Zephyrian military history. The humans were not trying to win a conventional victory. They were trying to make the occupation of Earth so costly that the Zephyrian Empire would eventually abandon the conquest. Dr. Wade finished her virus and contacted Lieutenant Alex Turner, who had volunteered for the delivery mission. His stealth fighter had been modified with captured alien technology that might allow him to penetrate the enemy fleet's defenses. The chances of success were minimal, but it was humanity's last hope. Turner took off from a hidden airfield in Montana as Zephyrian fighters patrolled the skies above Earth. His small craft was invisible to most sensors, but he would have to get very close to an enemy command ship to upload the virus. Every pilot in the human Air Force had volunteered for the mission, but Turner had been chosen because he was the best pilot humanity had. The resistance continued to spread across Earth as more and more civilians joined the fight against the occupying forces. Admiral Logan found herself controlling the major population centers but losing control of the planet itself. For every human killed in battle, 2 more seemed to take their place. "These creatures are impossible to defeat," Logan told her, senior staff, during a strategy meeting. "Every victory we achieve comes at a cost that we cannot sustain indefinitely." They refuse to accept that they have lost even when faced with overwhelming evidence of our superiority. Lieutenant Turner's fighter approached the Zephyrian command fleet as alien interceptors closed in from all directions. His ship took hit after hit as he struggled to reach his target. The virus was loaded and ready to transmit, but he needed to get within a few thousand meters of the enemy flagship. Enemy fire tore through his fighter's hull and destroyed his life support systems. Turner was dying, but he was close enough to complete his mission. With his last breath, he activated the virus transmission and sent humanity's final weapon into the heart of the Zephyrian fleet. Lieutenant Turner's fighter exploded in a brilliant flash of light, just as Dr. Wade's virus entered the Zephyrian communication network. The effect was not immediate, but within minutes, ships throughout the alien fleet began experiencing system failures. Navigation computers sent vessels crashing into each other while weapon systems fired at their own allies. Admiral Logan watched in horror as her perfect fleet descended into chaos. The virus was spreading through the quantum network faster than her technicians could contain it. Ships that had maintained formation for centuries were now drifting helplessly through space or firing randomly at anything their corrupted sensors detected. On Earth, the resistance fighters led by Colonel Barnes watched alien aircraft fall from the sky as their control systems failed. Zephyrian ground troops found themselves cut off from their command structure and began making tactical mistakes that human fighters exploited ruthlessly. The invasion that had seemed unstoppable just hours before was collapsing. Sergeant Ross and his squad of Marines were conducting a patrol through the ruins of Washington, D.C., when they encountered something unprecedented. A group of Zephyrian soldiers had become separated from their unit and were trying to establish a command post in the wreckage of the Capitol building. What happened next would change the course of galactic history. The human Marines could have easily killed the isolated aliens, but Ross made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of attacking, he ordered his men to surround the Zephyrians and demand their surrender. The alien soldiers were so confused by the system failures affecting their equipment that they complied without resistance. Among the prisoners was Admiral Logan herself, who had been leading a ground operation to secure Earth's government buildings when the virus struck her fleet. She found herself captured by a squad of human soldiers who treated her with dignity, despite everything her forces had done to their planet. Ross looked at the alien commander who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries and made another decision that would echo through history. "You are our prisoner, but you will be treated according to the laws of war. You will not be harmed or abused while under our protection." Logan stared at the human sergeant in amazement. "Why?" she asked in perfect English. "My forces have destroyed your cities and killed millions of your people. By every law of conquest, you have the right to execute me immediately. Why do you offer mercy to your enemy?" Ross thought about the question for a long moment before answering. "Because that is who we are. We fight when we must, and we show mercy when we can. Killing a prisoner would make us no better than the monsters we are fighting against." Dr. Wade monitored the virus's progress from her underground laboratory and watched as it spread throughout the Zephyrian fleet. The alien ships were turning on each other as their identification systems failed, and their weapons targeted anything that moved. In less than 6 hours, the most powerful fleet in galactic history had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged vessels. Admiral Morrison emerged from the underground command bunker, where she had been coordinating Earth's defense, and looked up at the sky. The massive alien ships that had blotted out the stars were now drifting helplessly, or destroying each other in automated battles. Humanity had achieved the impossible. The ground war continued for 3 more days, but without fleet support and, with their communication networks in chaos, the Zephyrian forces could not maintain their positions. Human resistance fighters recaptured city after city, while alien troops either surrendered or retreated to isolated strongholds. Logan spent those 3 days as a prisoner in a human military facility, where she was given medical treatment for injuries sustained during her capture. Her captors continued to treat her with respect, despite the destruction her forces had caused. She began to understand that these humans possessed something her species had lost long ago. On the 4th day after the virus attack, Logan was brought before President Carter in a secure location beneath the ruins of the White House. The human leader looked tired and worn from the long battle, but her eyes still held the same determination that had defined humanity's resistance. "Admiral Logan, you are defeated," Carter said simply. "Your fleet is destroyed and your ground forces are surrounded. I am prepared to offer you terms for the surrender of your remaining troops and the withdrawal of your forces from our system." Logan studied the human president and realized that she was facing something unprecedented in her 3 centuries of conquest. Carter was offering negotiated surrender terms to a defeated enemy, rather than demanding unconditional capitulation. No species had ever shown such restraint after achieving victory over the Zephyrians. "What are your terms?" Logan asked. She expected the humans to demand tribute or hostages or some form of revenge for the destruction that had been inflicted on their world. Instead, Carter's offer was surprisingly generous. "Your surviving ships will be allowed to leave our system, unmolested. Your wounded soldiers will receive medical treatment before being repatriated. In exchange, you will broadcast a message to the galactic community, explaining what happened here and warning other species about humanity's capabilities." Logan agreed to the terms because she had no choice, but also because she wanted other species to understand what they would face if they threatened humanity. She recorded her message from the bridge of her crippled flagship as human ships escorted her fleet out of the solar system. "I am Admiral Vera Logan of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. For 3 centuries, my forces have conquered every world we have encountered. No species has ever resisted our might or inflicted significant casualties on our fleets. Today I must report that we have been defeated by a species that should have been helpless against our superior technology." She paused and looked at the blue planet that had humbled the greatest military force in the galaxy. "The humans did not defeat us through superior weapons or numbers. They defeated us through something far more powerful. They refused to surrender, even when surrender was the logical choice. They fought with a determination that I have never encountered in my lifetime of conquest." Logan's message continued as her ships limped away from Earth. "These humans are not like other species. They do not fight because they believe they can win. They fight because they refuse to lose what makes them who they are. Any species that threatens their freedom should expect to pay a price that no victory could justify." The message was broadcast throughout the galaxy and had an immediate effect on dozens of worlds that were under Zephyrian occupation. Species that had surrendered decades ago began to rise up against their oppressors, inspired by humanity's example. The Zephyrian Empire found itself fighting rebellions on 100 different worlds. Dr. Chen analyzed the long-term implications of humanity's victory from her laboratory on the rebuilt Luna base. The defeat of the Zephyrian fleet had sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. For the first time in centuries, there was hope that oppressed species could throw off the chains of their conquerors. Earth began the long process of rebuilding from the devastation of the invasion. Cities were reconstructed, and new orbital defenses were built using captured alien technology. But the most important change was in how humanity saw itself. They were no longer an isolated species hiding in a single star system. Admiral Morrison was promoted to Supreme Commander of the new United Earth Space Force and given the mission of protecting not just humanity, but any species that asked for help against oppressors. The victory over the Zephyrians had made Earth a beacon of hope for freedom throughout the galaxy. President Carter addressed the United Nations 1 year after the invasion in a speech that was broadcast to every human colony and to dozens of alien worlds. We have proven that no force in the universe is strong enough to break the spirit of free people. Our victory was not won through superior technology or greater numbers. It was won through the determination to remain true to our principles, even when the entire galaxy expected us to surrender. The Zephyrian Empire never recovered from the defeat at Earth. Their other subject species followed humanity's example and fought for their independence with the same fierce determination. Within 10 years, the empire that had dominated the galaxy for centuries had collapsed into dozens of free worlds. Logan herself became an advocate for peaceful coexistence between species after witnessing humanity's capacity for both war and mercy. She spent her remaining years traveling the galaxy and sharing the lessons she had learned in Earth's skies. The greatest strength was not the ability to conquer others, but the courage to remain free yourself. Earth stood as proof that sometimes the most important victory was not defeating your enemies but showing them a better way to live. Humanity had shattered the Invincible Armada, not through superior force but through superior resolve. They had saved not just their own world, but the entire galaxy from the curse of hopeless surrender to overwhelming power. Admiral Morrison stood before the holographic display in the command center of the UES Defiance and revealed humanity's most desperate secret. For 50 years, human miners had been working in the asteroid belt, not just to gather resources but to prepare for this exact moment. Thousands of asteroids had been carefully hollowed out and filled with nuclear weapons, then positioned along the most likely approach routes to Earth. Colonel Ben Murphy commanded the orbital defense platforms that surrounded Earth like a protective shell. His weapons were powerful, but they were nothing compared to what the Zephyrians possessed. However, the asteroid mines were different. They were not designed to penetrate alien shields or destroy enemy ships directly. They had a much more subtle purpose. The mines will create massive electromagnetic pulses and gravitational distortions, explained Dr. Martin Gray, who had spent his entire career designing the hidden weapons. The Zephyrians travel in tight formations because their shields can overlap and protect each other. When the mines detonate, they will disrupt their sensor networks and break up their formations. Captain Rachel Kim listened to the briefing from her position aboard the assault cruiser Liberty. She commanded the human fleet's fastest ships and would lead the attack when the trap was sprung. Her crews had been training for this mission for months, but everyone knew it was essentially a suicide run. The Zephyrian fleet approached Earth, in perfect formation with their largest ships in the center, and smaller vessels protecting the flanks. Admiral Logan was confident that this would be another easy conquest. The human fleet was tiny compared to her armada, and their technology was primitive. She expected the battle to last less than an hour. Dr. Amy Chen watched the enemy approach from her laboratory on Earth. She had identified specific weaknesses in Zephyrian ship design by studying the wreckage from the first battle. Their vessels were incredibly powerful, but they had design flaws that came from centuries of facing no real opposition. If the human attack could target these weak points, they might be able to inflict serious damage. "All ships report ready," came the voice of Admiral Morrison over the communication system. The human fleet was positioned behind the moon where they could not be detected by Zephyrian sensors. Every captain knew the plan, and every crew member understood that they were about to attempt something that had never been tried before in galactic history. The first asteroid mines detonated when the leading edge of the Zephyrian fleet reached the orbit of Mars. The explosions were carefully timed to create a cascade effect that rippled through space like invisible waves. Electromagnetic pulses scrambled communication systems, while gravitational distortions pulled ships out of their careful formations. Admiral Logan felt her command ship shudder as the first wave of distortion hit her fleet. Warning lights flashed on control panels throughout the bridge as systems struggled to compensate for the unexpected interference. She had never experienced anything like this in 3 centuries of conquest. "What is happening?" she demanded from her tactical officer. The alien officer studied his instruments with confusion. "Unknown energy signatures throughout the fleet, Admiral. Our formation is breaking apart, and we are losing contact with outer squadrons." More asteroid mines detonated in sequence, creating an ever-expanding field of chaos that engulfed the entire Zephyrian Armada. Ships that had maintained perfect formation for decades found themselves scattered across millions of cubic kilometers of space, with their sensors blind and their communications disrupted. This was the moment Admiral Morrison had been waiting. "For all ships, attack now," she commanded. The human fleet emerged from behind the moon and accelerated toward the confused enemy formation at maximum speed. Every weapon humanity possessed was brought to bear on specific targets that Dr. Chen had identified as vulnerable. Captain Kim led the assault wing directly into the heart of the enemy fleet. Her ships were fast and maneuverable compared to the EIC's massive Zephyrian vessels, but they were also fragile. Energy beams from alien weapons destroyed human ships with single hits, but the humans kept coming. "Target the shield generators on the third dreadnought," Kim ordered her weapons officer. Human missiles struck the alien ship's hull at the exact points where Dr. Chen had predicted the shields would be weakest. The massive vessel's protective barrier flickered and failed, leaving it vulnerable to follow-up attacks. The battle became a chaotic melee, as human ships darted between the much larger alien vessels like attack dogs, harassing giants. The humans used their superior speed and knowledge of the local space to stay one step ahead of Zephyrian targeting systems. Every second of confusion they had created with the asteroid mines was precious beyond measure. Lieutenant Commander Alex Barnes piloted his destroyer through a gap between two Zephyrian cruisers and launched his entire missile payload at an enemy command ship. The missiles struck the alien vessel's bridge section and caused a massive explosion that disabled the ship's ability to coordinate with the rest of the fleet. Admiral Logan watched in amazement as her perfect formation dissolved into chaos. The humans were attacking like nothing she had ever seen before. They showed no regard for their own safety and seemed to grow more determined as their losses mounted. Already she had lost more ships in this single battle than in her previous 10 conquests combined. Colonel Murphy coordinated the orbital defense platforms to provide covering fire for the attacking fleet. His weapons were too weak to seriously damage Zephyrian capital ships, but they could destroy smaller escort vessels and provide distractions at critical moments. Every shot counted in this desperate battle. The asteroid mines continued to detonate throughout the battle, creating new waves of interference that prevented the Zephyrians from regrouping. Dr. Gray watched his life's work unfold on tactical displays and felt both pride and terror at what humanity had accomplished. They were actually inflicting serious casualties on the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Captain Sarah Mitchell commanded a squadron of human frigates that attacked the engine sections of Zephyrian battleships. Her ships were so small, compared to the alien vessels, that they could hide in sensor shadows and strike at critical components before the enemy could respond. 3 massive alien ships lost propulsion and began drifting helplessly through space. The battle raged for 6 hours, with the humans using hit-and-run tactics to avoid decisive engagement with the superior alien firepower. Admiral Morrison coordinated the assault from her flagship while personally leading attacks on the largest enemy vessels. She knew that every minute the battle continued meant more human lives lost, but also more damage inflicted on the invaders. As the effects of the asteroid mines began to fade, the Zephyrians started to regain control of their formation. Admiral Logan managed to establish communication with her scattered fleet and began organizing a counterattack. The humans had fought brilliantly, but they were vastly outnumbered, and their losses were mounting rapidly. "All ships begin withdrawal," Morrison ordered when her sensors showed that 60% of the human fleet had been destroyed. The surviving ships pulled back toward Earth's orbital defenses, while the Zephyrians tried to pursue them. The retreat was as organized as the attack had been, with faster ships providing cover for damaged vessels. Dr. Chen analyzed the battle data as it came in and realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented. They had destroyed nearly 1,000 Zephyrian ships and damaged hundreds more. For the first time in their history, the aliens had faced an enemy that inflicted significant casualties while refusing to surrender. Admiral Logan surveyed the wreckage floating around her damaged fleet and felt something she had never experienced before: uncertainty. These humans had fought like nothing she had encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. They seemed to view their own deaths as acceptable losses if they could hurt their enemies in return. The surviving human ships reached Earth's orbital defenses and prepared for the final battle. They had bought time and inflicted damage, but the Zephyrian fleet still numbered over 8,000 vessels. The odds were still hopeless, but somehow the humans seemed more determined than ever. Morrison addressed her remaining crews one final time. You have shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Whatever happens next, remember that we have already won the most important victory. We have proven that free people will never stop fighting for their freedom, no matter how powerful their enemies may be.